Welcome to SciTech Culture with Steve Kern and Ben Warner, where we examine science, technology, and culture in the 21st century. Visit our website at scitechculture.com. Hello and welcome to SciTech Culture, the show where we discuss science, technology, and culture in its myriad of forms. My name is Ben Warner, and I'm joined once again by my good friend and colleague Steve Kern. How are we today, Steve?
I'm good. Hi, Ben. Hi, everyone. It's been a big evening, and I think we're in for a big few days.
Absolutely. Today we're going to talk about a couple of things, but just following on from last week, and I think it's a nice tie-in with our topic that we did do last week on the Brexit and this idea of votes not necessarily, or vote outcomes not necessarily going a way that people might expect. We're recording this today on the day after the general election that's been held in Australia, and we're looking at the possibility, a fairly strong possibility of another hung parliament. Now, that may not happen, and by the time we go to air with this, they may have a result by then, or maybe it'll take 3 or 4 weeks like the last time back in 2010 to get a result. But we just wanted to touch on this even just as a cultural thing, because it's a bit like the Brexit in a sense that if you have a look at the numbers, which I think was astonishing, is that you had such a huge drift away from anyone, like these people voting for either one of the two major parties, like above a quarter, well above a quarter of the electorate voted for someone else. And that, I think that's a bit like the Brexit vote, people like voting in a way that you're not expecting them to vote. And in our case, it's a bit of a repudiation of the orthodoxy, the traditional orthodoxy. It's either one or the other. That's what we've been used to, or at least our generation has. Maybe these new youngsters coming through are used to swapping prime ministers out every year or two. But it's fascinating, isn't it, that we're in this place again, and it makes it really difficult. How are these people going to be able to deliver? I think that's what we were talking about just before we got on in this type of environment.
Well, there's two things here, and I think the first one is that we're used to the two-party sort of system. Most democracies have two dominant parties. Interestingly, even if there isn't a third party, when that vote starts to approach a third for not either of the two major parties, well, then that effectively means there's three political directions. And you can see what instability it brings and what issues it brings. In Australia, certainly now, the Senate will be made up of different groups. There won't be a two-party majority there. It won't be in the House of Reps, although it looks like the government will get across the line just enough to form a majority there in the lower house. But it has big implications. The other thing that I'm thinking is really odd about this, with both the Brexit and the Australian election, is that the pollsters didn't pick either. So whatever polling techniques they've used for the last 50, 70, 100 years don't seem to be working anymore. And it's happened really quickly. It's happened in about the same amount of time as we've had the iPhone. From about 2007 now, in just 10 years, I think things are changing very rapidly, and I think social media is behind it.
Yeah, we'll just blame everything on the iPhone. It's the thing that changed everything. I guess the other sort of point to say on that is that, and we can bring social media into it and sort of go on to our other topic today about social media burnout. But I think social media does give a voice to people online in potentially a more coordinated way than maybe they haven't had in the past. Now, there might be a lot of groups out there that might be unsavory, for instance, to a lot of the mainstream public, but they're able to coordinate their efforts on social media platforms just as much as what anyone else can, really. And if you have a look at the vote in this instance, I saw a number of news outlets today saying that, for instance, the One Nation Party that we thought had disappeared into oblivion, ages ago, many years ago, when it was big back in the late 90s, that now it's come back. and we didn't see any of these people, around like advertising what they were doing. Like I didn't see anything anyway. Maybe because maybe the electorate I was in wasn't as big a focus for them, but they promote themselves to the right people on social media. They get them, activated, so to speak. And a lot of these news outlets were saying, they didn't do it with any traditional news coverage or advertising or, print, on TV or in printed form. So how did they get the vote? Well, this is obviously, it could potentially be an answer to that.
Well, that's if you get enough people to rally around a banner or a slogan or good, bad, ugly or other, Facebook allows you to communicate to them pretty cheaply, and that's really what it's about. I mean, you don't even need Facebook advertising. If people believe, we want to turn the sky, orange party or something like that, and enough people want to do that, then they share that. You don't even need to advertise. You just need to find that hook to get everybody involved together. And I think what's interesting about this in particular is, how do they do most of the polling? Well, it's telephone polling. Are they ringing the right people? Are they just ringing the people that do two-party preferred?
Well, that's what I'm wondering, whether these guys are suffering from the traditional orthodoxy mindset as well. So if they're not tapping into it, that's where you're getting the not picking the result, so to speak. Yeah,
that's right.
So yeah, it'll be interesting. I think the next one, the next big one that we obviously have to look at is the US general election later in the year, and see how that goes. Don't count Trump out yet, guys, because
I agree.
It could very well happen in this type of environment that we seem to be having. Obviously, each country has its own issues or whatnot, but you can see some parallels, even if it's in a loose, general way, about what's driving a lot of this, I guess.
That's right, and that's the banjo playing supporters of Trump. Might not be available by the phone to see what pre-polling they may do.
Exactly. So just continuing on from that, we're going to talk a bit about social media burnout, and I almost feel, if we engage with any of these political groups, you probably would get burnt out. But in this particular instance, what we're talking about is this idea of being over it, I guess. Now, obviously, in one place I want to start is I was amused to see if you Google it, social media burnout, you get a whole bunch of people, giving you the top 10 ways to avoid social media burnout, and you get your usual things about, pick your time and your place. Don't, make sure you, distance yourself from it every day. Be focused, be committed to, all the usual. I don't want to call it rubbish, but that's how it came across to me, because it was just general tips that you could apply to anything, really. But I thought this is more about why are we doing it. Now, obviously, there are certain instances where it is useful. So, for instance, if we think of our podcast, for instance, Twitter to me is useful because it's a way to announce our episodes, for instance, that we put out. It's a way for us to announce the blogs we put out. It's a way to, and then once that happens, to interact with anyone that wants to comment on it. So it's that to me is a useful thing, but the thing is, it's I'm not on there all the time looking at it. There are certain times that I will post. There are certain times I'll look at responses and who's checking things out, who's favoriting things, who's retweeting things, all that sort of thing. But then I'll distance, like usually the weekend period, early part of the week, I might not be as tuned into it. Just to give that space, because that's our sort of quiet part of the week, when we, between recording it and then getting it up online.
Yeah.
But then, I compare that to, say, like, I can't imagine, I don't know if you think differently, what use I would have for a personal usage of a Twitter account. And even if I did, it's a bit like the my interaction with Facebook, which I have the personal account there, but because it's not about sharing anything anymore. And if we bring Facebook into it, and I don't know what again, if you think about this as well, Steve, is that I think that with me, posting to Facebook now is less about sharing things with people as it is about keeping your followers entertained with what you're posting, which is a very different focus to just sharing and catching up with people.
It's all changed. I think we hit peak Twitter maybe in 2013 or 2014. I used to tweet. I don't anymore. I got tired of it. And then interestingly, probably a couple of years ago, I saw some blogs from people who used to do a lot of tweeting. And people made personal commentaries and quite frequently, and they'd tweet all day about what they were seeing, what they were doing, etc., etc. But, people found it all too hard because you had to be clever, all those things with Twitter. So now it's become an information source. It's a media outlet. It's a media channel. As you say, we tweet what happens here on SciTech Culture to let you know there's a new show, what we're talking about, etc., etc. People who have a sales program, marketing program, whatever else, use social media for the same. And I think that contributes a lot to the burnout. For me, Twitter is a lot going on. And if you've got Twitter and Facebook or Twitter and Snapchat or any of the other platforms there are, it's a lot of apps to cycle through to keep track of, to keep up with, and you find yourself totally distracted. Facebook is different. I'm actually a big fan of Facebook, even though I'm over it personally. But I think Facebook is amazing, but once again, it's really easy to get burnt out on these things. And changes on Facebook in the last 3 years have been enormous. As you say, it's gone from being personal and a real, almost intimate one-on-one sort of, rundown on what you're up to now it's a news feed. It's mixed in with what some of your friends and family are doing. There's now streams, so you can choose, a topical stream with it. It's actually fragmenting, if you can believe it or not, into smaller and smaller fragments, which means it'll take more and more effort now on Facebook to keep up to date on everything, which once again isn't a bad thing. It depends how you use these tools, but I did some experimentation on Facebook in the last 6 months, and I've been all the way through it, and I can't see anything new. I found new people and I didn't like them. I'm a bit over it, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think one of the key things, and apart from, I think that idea of distraction, that there's just so much new stuff going through the feed all the time that you could just sit there and be in a trance looking at this stuff if you're not careful. And then on the flip side is that, say you're posting, you don't actually want to be posting the same, similar things, because even your followers that you've got on there will just lose interest. Like, you may post a couple of great photos of a holiday you've done, but if it turns out that you go on another holiday, 6 months later, and it's sort of similar, you're kind of posting the same sort of photos and all that.
If you actually went, you might just be posting the same photos.
Well, that's it. If they don't know, and you find that people won't be interacting with it because we've seen that already. And then it's not about what you're doing. It's like I was saying before. It's not about what you're doing. It's about giving them something new to be interested in. So what's supposed to be like a personal sort of expression of what you're doing is now actually an entertainment feed, which and again you multiply that across multiple channels, and you can just your brain will just get tired out by the whole thing. And again, the same thing would happen in a more business-like environment, I guess, if you want to call it that, where you're trying to promote something.
Oh, that's right. I mean, I think personally, Facebook burnout usually follows a pretty clear pattern. So, you get hyper excited about Facebook, you post everything, you're on there all the time. Let's say any social media, you're on there all the time. Then that gradually sort of for some people it becomes FOMO, the fear of missing out. You start to get anxious using it. For other people, you just get tired of contributing. You really start to struggle to think, what am I going to contribute next? What am I going to do? And you keep plugging away, and you become more and more distracted, more and more anxious, more and more tired of looking at the same stuff. And you realise, for me personally, what started to happen, I realised I was actually struggling to concentrate on anything for longer than 3 minutes.
Which is how social media is kind of set up, isn't it?
That's right. And so, and then also combined with that, I was experimenting with Facebook, and I wasn't liking what I was seeing, because I found what sort of people really are out there. And they say, Facebook is self-reflective. You only hear the views, see the people that you like to see. As very true, because that's how it is in real life. If you really want to horrify yourself, go out there, make some friends with people you got nothing in common with on Facebook. And I can guarantee you it doesn't take long before you want out. And that's social media burnout. They're pure and simple. And that's what happened to me. So now, maybe on the desktop, I'll do a little bit of social media surfing just to see if my friends are up to anything interesting. I couldn't be bothered responding anymore. Sorry, everyone, for missing your birthday. It's not because I don't love you, but I just, nothing like that. I just figure that I'll see them, or if something I really need to talk to them, I can send them a PM.
Yeah. I guess one last point, and there's just something I thought of now, is whether it's I think the burnout issue obviously can apply to anyone, because that's just, if you overuse something or you interact with something too much, like in this particular instance, in the nature of it, you're going to burn out anyway. But perhaps maybe, like a generation like ours, I think would get over something like this maybe a lot quicker potentially, because of the fact that when we grew up, we interacted with people in a different way. I'm wondering if the current generations coming through, who this is how you interact with people, and that's what they're brought up on, whether they will be not necessarily, they could potentially be burnt out, but are they going to go away from it? I guess because of it, will they know to go away from it? Would be my question.
Well, if anyone's got the answer to that, let us know. I'd be fascinated.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Steve, we might wrap it up there. That's a pretty fascinating topic, and we'll be posting all of this on social media as well for you to interact with. So I don't know exactly what we're recommending, but we'll get there anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so don't forget our website, SciTechCulture.com. You can get all of our links and content there, just like we were saying before. Interact with us on Twitter, Google+, and Facebook. And if you think anyone's interested in these ongoing discussions that Steve and I have on a regular basis, feel free to send them to SciTechCulture.com. We'd greatly appreciate that, which is actually where we really interact, I think, through our platform and all of that sort of thing. All right, so that's it for this episode. We'll catch you next time.